Hang on a second. Brenda, did you want me to start letting people in?
Boom.
You got them? Excellent. Good morning. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I said I was not going to be obnoxious this morning.
Oh, that's all right. I don't think we just do. We want to welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to day 3 of Wit, Wisdom, and Wine. Love seeing familiar faces. Love seeing new faces out there. If you're comfortable, we love having the video on. Get a chance to connect with each other. If you would, couple of things that I would recommend for your Zoom experience. Audrey is going to have a PowerPoint as well. So if you go up into, usually it's in the right-hand corner, if you click view, you either select speaker view or side-by-side speaker view. That will provide you with that split screen experience so you can see the speaker and the presentation. Encourage you to open up your chat window that might be located at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen. I know when I'm screen sharing, sometimes I have to get it through the more button up at the top of the screen. That is where we will be asking questions. So, and we've had some great discussions during our sessions while the presentation is happening as well. So encourage you to do that. And there's also an opportunity to provide some nonverbal reactions by hitting the reaction button, and there's some emojis there. And so another really great way. So just to interact with each other. So we're going to be getting going in about 2 minutes today. And I know I'm personally really excited to hear this presentation. I mean, we're here to support the library throughout this 3-day of Wit, Wisdom, and Wine. And so to specifically hear even more in depth about the amazing work the library doing is pretty exciting, pretty darn exciting to me. And so I hope everybody's doing well. You got enough coffee this morning. We were talking about, some of us were in the ghost hunting session last night. And some of us thought, well, like, yeah, that made for some interesting falling asleep thoughts going to last night. So I'm kidding. Are people going to be going to sessions throughout the day? Give me a thumbs up if you're going to be attending sessions throughout the day and evening. Yeah. Yep. Oh, look at this. I love it. I love it. Yes, we are too. We're going to be back and forth throughout the day as well. I'm super excited for all of the speakers we have today. Such a gamut from authors to with 3 authors today, which I think is really exciting. Local artists, learning about cheese, learning about wine. I think that's what's great about Wit, Wisdom, and Wine is just this opportunity to learn so much, which is what the library is all about. So I think in my former life, I was a newscaster. So to the filling the space. Welcome if you're just joining us. So excited to have you all here today. It is 10 o'clock, Brenda. Should we go ahead and get started?
We can. You know, I like to be prompt, so we don't want to penalize people for being on time. So welcome. I'm Brenda Cardock. I am the Executive Director of the Rochester Public Library Foundation. This is my second Wit, Wisdom, and Wine, and this is our 20th annual. First virtual, so lots of different records being set, I guess. To keep my rambling short, we prepared a video so that you can see what is going on with the Rochester Public Library Foundation. And I am going to use, oops, I forgot to, this is my first flub on this. I usually have this file ready to go, and I didn't this morning.
There's no flubs, there's just happy little accidents.
Yeah, thank you for bearing with me. I promised I wasn't going to ramble so we could get onto the speaker, and there I go. So here we go. Enjoy.
Rochester Public Library Foundation was formed in 1996 in an effort to raise private funds for the library and ensure its continued success and achievements.
The foundation supports initiatives, often creating the only opportunity for pilot projects and incentives for community feedback.
In past years, we have helped launch the Wi-Fi hotspot program, providing connectivity in homes that have no internet.
Rochester Reading Champions, which pairs tutors with struggling readers to achieve results.
And last year, patrons joined in the commitment to help the library go fine-free, to help remove barriers to accessing the library's resources.
We are proud of the positive impact these programs have had on our community.
Tutors remark on the joy it brings them to see the confidence and pride on their students' faces as they master skills they had all but given up on.
Our neighbors are able to apply for jobs and video chat with relatives as they keep social distance in their homes using our hotspots.
Materials are being checked out in large quantities and picked up through touchless delivery in the Mayo Civic Center ramp and the library's newly installed walk-up windows.
But we still do not have all the resources we need to help all those who could benefit from tutoring.
The hotspots continue to have a wait list.
And we continue to investigate ways we can grow our service to our community, especially as we are facing greater challenges this year than ever before.
Thank you for supporting the library and foundation. The kindness of people like you means so much and allows our community to flourish.
Thank you for sharing our belief in the importance of information, books, materials, and resources.
Giving everyone equal access to learn, grow, and thrive is at the center of everything we do.
If you would like to pitch in to help us in our efforts, please go to our website. And thank you for your support.
Every time I see that, I think, wow, we have such a gem of a resource as the library. And I always think it's not my mother's library. It's not my mother's library. The library does so much more. And I think even in the time of COVID, they continue to innovate and think how we can continue to serve our community. And that's really what we're here to talk about and learn about today with Audrey Betcher, Executive Director for the Rochester Public Library. Audrey has been with the Rochester Public Library since 1996 and was named director in the year 2000. Prior to working at RPL, Audrey managed a computer system for public and school libraries in southeastern Minnesota. She also worked for a library automation vendor in St. Louis. She is a graduate of St. Catherine's University in St. Paul and holds her Master's of Library Science from the University of Missouri, Columbia. She is involved in the community through volunteering, Rotary, where she is president-elect, Cradle to Career Leadership Table, Ready to Lead Leadership Table, and she is a Rochester Reading Champions tutor. She is here to talk to us today about stronger connections during COVID. Please join me in welcoming Audrey Betcher.
Hello. Let me share my screen. Let's see.
We were commenting earlier about your bookshelves, Audrey. You look like you work at a library.
Well, when I built this house, I said I have to have a library, so I got one. So, all right. Do you have the full screen? No. All right. Do you have the right screen? Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. I appreciate everybody being here this morning to hear about what's been happening at the library since COVID. It's hard to believe that it's been almost a year. Librarians have some really amazing skills that the community needs, and even more so during a pandemic. And a lot of things have come together to really put the library in a place to, we've deployed those skills in ways that we never anticipated. So just to kind of set the stage, to talk about where we were right before the pandemic. So one of the things that the library board had been working on was really on the strategic plan and making sure we were going in the right direction. January of 2020, the library board approved their strategic plan with a new vision statement for a strong and equitable community and a mission statement of welcoming all to connect and learn, and really doubling down on our commitment to equity, and our commitment to connection, and then building the infrastructure to support that within our community. We're a library that really works its strategic plan. So the library board had just recommitted right before that. So the library and the city has long had an emergency operation and a continuity of operations plan. Being part of that emergency operations team, I had been through FEMA online training. We'd done tabletop exercises, though I will say we had never done a pandemic tabletop exercise. We'd always done things like tornadoes or floods or things like that. And in that structure, the library director is the section chief for the Health and Human Services section. And it really is about, that one's really about connections, and really, in a flood scenario, the head of Health and Human Services is seen as a connector to the United Way, to volunteers, to other agencies. But we also have library leadership on other teams, including logistics and planning. So we were still recovering from the water damage that was caused by a leak in September of 2019. And we had when that event happened, we went into an emergency operations into a command center for several months as we were working through the damage to the library. And we were only closed for 2 days, and there was lots of improvisation to get open. And we also at that time started huddles, and huddles are where during the flood, everybody from the library would come upstairs and we'd all stand around and talk about what needed to happen. We'd communicate what was going on. We'd say, this is where we need help today. But we found those so successful that we continued them. And so that has, some of those things actually set us up very well to go into the pandemic. The other thing that was happening is the city and library IT infrastructure has been separate for years because they kind of developed independently from each other. And so really just before the pandemic, those systems merged, and that has been really important. And getting on the Office 365 platform has been huge in terms of being able to work remotely. So when the library closed for the pandemic, we did keep telephone reference going. That was something we kept going from the very beginning. And then we started hearing that the mayor was getting lots and lots of phone calls. So I had reached out to the head of the EOC, which is the fire chief, Eric Kurska, and said, we have capacity, we can help. So they were like, perfect, let's get this thing rolling. So in a very short period of time, we opened the COVID line. So where that's going to is it's routing to librarians that are working from their homes. And so in fact, it was going so well that this county also had a COVID line, and we merged lines. So now we have this collaboration with the county that the librarians take the first kind of triage the calls and answer the ones we can. And we've built up some really good partnerships where we keep good data coming in. So we're giving the community the right information. But ones we cannot answer, ones that really need a social worker or additional resources, we put into a system called DLAN, and then the county social workers will take it from there. And this has been a really good partnership, And we get questions on, vaccines, testing, masking. We do get library questions. food insecurity, all those kinds of things are what's happening. And to just give you an idea of what kinds of calls we take, here's a grid to show you that really we take a little bit of everything, but the health and symptoms was by far, in terms of COVID type calls, was really the number one. But as vaccines have been rolling out, we've kind of been the vaccine hotline for the city, and we've answered a lot of questions for our community. And now it's every 2 weeks. There's a joint information briefing that happens with Olmsted County Public Health, the county's EOC, the cities involved, Mayo, clinics involved, OMC's involved, and we hear from the local data, and we know what everybody's doing. And Mayo Clinic has commented on those calls how really important it is that callers get a person. They get someone who get a real person when they call. And our callers, I cannot tell you how grateful they are that they actually get a person and can ask their questions. We also know what the trends are. So by those calls, we know what's happening, and it helps us with the communications teams share that information so that can get messaged out to the community. But overall, we're still taking more library calls than COVID calls. So, but we're averaging about 165 of those calls a day. So that was the first thing that happened during the pandemic. And then the second was the day center. So this is another thing that just, nationally, every public library in the country works with people experiencing homelessness. The library is a place where you don't have to pay to get in. You can stay as long as you want. And there are things to do. We have viewing stations, and we have books and materials. So people have things to do. In the summer of 2019, the entire library team took this training, this Ryan Dowd training. Ryan Dowd is runs a homeless shelter in Chicago. And he has worked with librarians across the country. And in fact, he came to Rochester in November of 2019 to make a presentation for the entire community. And so every library team member took that training, and it really changed our perspective on how we serve people experiencing homelessness. I will tell you, when I first came to the library many, many years ago, we really had the attitude, you can stay here as long as you want, as long as you behave. And as over the years, we're like, they're part of our community too. We need to serve everyone in our community. And the Wellness Corner was established a number of years ago. And for example, we partner with, pre-COVID, we partner with Winona State University nursing students who would come over and do some basic wellness checks. And some of the people in the library who experienced homelessness took great advantage of those nursing students. So in a real positive way, that the nursing students got some public health experience, and the people experiencing homelessness had access to information and some basic health checks. So but as we took that training, we really looked at some of the psychology behind people living in constant trauma. Because if you don't know where your next meal is coming, you don't know where you're going to stay tonight, there is a lot of trauma in that, and it is really hard to think long term. So we've really taken a look at some of our internal policies based on some of that training. So when everything shut down in March, there was really no basic infrastructure. There were, people could come into the library and use the restrooms. Those were closed. The park restrooms were closed. There were just no basic infrastructure. So the city EOC asked the Health and Human Services team to stand up a day center, and I cannot tell you how amazing the team is. But within 48 hours, that day center opened at the Mayo Civic Center, and we had someone walking in our door in the first 5 minutes. When we opened at 8, there was someone there within just a few minutes. And so initially, the whole was about keeping people safe, you know, having access to clean water and meals and sanitation and shelter. And then the county also was providing social workers and housing specialists. And we brought some iPads over from the library, and people were able to access telemedicine. And so we really started building this bigger network and partnerships. And and we've had some really improved outcomes. And here are some of the things that have happened since the beginning of COVID. So 143 individuals have been placed in stable housing. And that came from the Olmsted County Housing Stability Team. More transitional housing was made available through the Creek and the 105 building, 105 Broadway. The county has leased both those buildings. And we've increased access to services. And we've also had a decrease in the number of police calls working with people experiencing homelessness. So some really good outcomes. But it couldn't happen without partnerships. And it has been amazing how all the partners have come together and worked together, because this has been, it has been a transition. You know, we started at the Mayo Civic Center, and then things started to open up, and the Mayo Civic Center wanted their space back. We partnered with Salvation Army and moved there. In the meantime, we were renovating the Silver Lake Station, the old fire station, to turn that into the day center. And so we moved there, and then we actually had a COVID outbreak, and we didn't have enough space to quarantine people. So we ended up moving back to the Mayo Civic Center. So the warming shelter that's located on 4th Street was used as a quarantine center. So, but all of that, we've really been coordinating with the county. The landing is now, we're contracting with the landing to provide that. They're doing the staffing now instead of library teammates, because the city asked all city employees to work at the day center, and because you had to volunteer, we couldn't assign you to it. And we had the library teammates stepped up in. There were a few people from other departments, but by far the majority of people working at the day center when we first started, until we started contracting with the landing, were library employees. And I could not be more proud. And they're so caring and really work to provide that service. So there's been a lot of transition, but the landing, the county, the city, the police department, Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, the Dorothy Day, all of us are working together, and we still meet weekly. And you know, it's just been amazing partnerships. And to continue that partnership theme, the nonprofit consortium right at the beginning started calling meetings, and the city, the county, the schools, nonprofits were all part of those conversations. And through that, we've done a lot of work around food security. And you know, at the beginning, PPE was a big issue, so working on that. Housing, talking about, you know, rental assistance, as well as you know, everything going on with people experiencing homelessness, realizing that with all the kids going to remote learning, there wasn't enough internet, and how are we going to work on that? All those things really got going. That group still meets, not as frequently, but again, it's really how everybody is coming together. The picture here is a food drop that was done in the early days. So we started off with a couple of food box drop events, but it really was about focusing on getting people to the resources, because the resources exist, but you know, it's like to make sure that people knew where the Channel One food locations were, because it was a huge lift to get to do all that work, and it was really important that we did it. The city, because right away we were heading into spring break, and the schools didn't have a plan to feed kids during spring break. So the city really worked to continue that. And Channel 1 has been doing really great work and getting some grants, and the library's call center helps people who don't have internet access sign up for it. So that's another way that we continue to partner through the call center and get people to the services that they need. And we work with Channel 1 to provide food at the day center. So we've really had some amazing partnerships going on through all this. And then our equity work. Certainly with the murder of George Floyd, it has really made it more obvious for everyone that there are these huge gaps. We knew they existed. Equity was obviously on our work plan prior to the pandemic or the murder of George Floyd, but we just, you know, it was kind of like our budget was kind of crazy anyway, but with everything going on, and the board just said it doesn't matter. You know, the foundation has stepped up to help. We really need to go fine free. We were looking at the data. The data was clear that the southeast part of Rochester has fewer card holders, and if they do have cards, it's more likely to be blocked. So it absolutely went with the poverty, and we said we've got to go fine free. And so the library board went fine free, and that has been. In fact, there's a survey out there right now. We're doing some follow-up work to see how that's impacted people. The library board also improved an equity action plan, and it requires that the library staff report every other board meeting. So, and the board has committed to review every single library policy with an equity lens. We did an equity audit through the Denver Public Library, and we're working our way through that. That's going to be a long process. And we're also committed to measurement. So I'm a firm believer in you do what you measure. And so I was part of a small group from the nonprofit consortium that worked on how are we going to measure. And we're really, and it's coming down to, besides the other data, like what are the gaps in educational outcomes, what are the gaps in health outcomes, and a lot of the social determinants of health. It's also about belonging, and belonging is really critical. And so we've come up with a couple of questions that really, can you within your organization, can you be your true self? And for the people who use your services, can they be their true selves? Can they really belong? So those are some of the things we've been working on as part of that nonprofit consortium. They have a listen, learn, and act commitment, and over 60 organizations signed on to that, including the city and the library. So that is something that we're committed to down to our bones. We're working on that, and we know that with the pandemic, you know, we know that people are disproportionately affected who are low income. But digital equity continues to be a huge issue for our community. We did deploy more hotspots in the pandemic. We extended Wi-Fi beyond the building. We had, had set it up to really be strongest within the building. Well, we moved those so that and set up an internet bench outside for the summer where you could come and sit at that bench and have good Wi-Fi. You can also park near the library and get Wi-Fi. We also deployed internet on the bookmobile. So the bookmobile continues to run. It provides access not only to holds. You can't actually go on the bookmobile, but you can go out to the bookmobile and get your holds, or ask them to pull something off the bookmobile for you, and they'll do that. But they also have internet. So you can go out and park or walk or be near the bookmobile and get internet access. And we're also now partnering with a nonprofit consortium to provide devices and culturally specific training. So there's some grant work that's going on in partnership with places like IMAA. We're looking at hiring some RCTC students. So doing some really interesting and important digital equity work. But we can't forget connectedness. So equity was part of our strategic plan, and so was connectedness. And so, so what we did is we deployed staff to call seniors, especially between March and September. So really looking at how do we make sure our seniors are connected and have some support. I think my favorite, so we got some shout out on social media for it, but I think my favorite story, because we asked people if they wanted a call back. So as we reached out, would you like us to call you back? And there was a woman, so we left messages when we didn't reach people. And one of the women called back and she said, I don't need you to call me back. I'll just listen to this message when I need to feel connected. And so I just love that story. But there were a number of people who asked us to call them back, and there are a few that we're still calling. But I really love that, how, and we sent postcards to over 7,400 people. So really reaching out to our community. It's just really important that we do that. Especially in those days when everybody was super locked down. And yet, and I haven't even really talked about our collections yet, and that's certainly a huge priority for us. In the days when everything was locked down, we absolutely bumped up our digital collections. And I understand that that doesn't work for everybody who doesn't have access to the internet. But from the graph here, what you can see is those are number of active users. So from the previous year is the low bar, and now this by month is the number of active digital users we currently have checking out materials and audio books and audiobooks on our digital platform. So we've seen a huge jump, and we've invested a lot of collection dollars into that digital collection. So we've also been running curbside and walk up. So you saw in the video that we added the walk up windows. We have been innovating. So we started at curbside during the summer, and but we knew that was not going to be safe at the point that it got to be icy and snowy. So we partnered with the parking ramp next door. And so now there's actually a little conference room that has always been there. And until we used it, I'd never seen anybody use it. And so we run curbside out of there, and it works actually really well. People can now, when we were doing it over the summer, you'd have to come and wait, and it was just, you could come whenever you wanted. And that was great, but there were times where we were just slammed. And so now you can place an appointment, you have a 15-minute window, and people love coming in and just going out, and how fast you can do that. But if you still want to just come on a first come, first serve, you can do a walk up. In the early days, we also did delivery. We deployed the bookmobile staff to actually make delivery. So if somebody could not come to curbside, we would deliver. And now that we're not doing deliveries quite like that anymore, because we have the bookmobile staff out on the bookmobile. We also realize that people can't browse, and we know that's a big deal. So what we've done are custom collections. So you can call us, email us, whatever, and say to us, I really want 50 children's books, and I want them to be about trucks, or, you can go in and place the holds if you want to, but if you want us to pull for you, we're happy to do it. And we call those custom collections. You can say, give me 20 mysteries, and I want them to be cozies, or, whatever you want to do, we'll pull them for you. And then we've also deployed BrainFuse, which is a one-on-one tutoring service from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. daily. And you actually you go online, you can connect to a tutor, you tell them what grade you're in, what subject you want, and boom, you get a live tutor who will help you with your homework. And so because our homework assistance program, we just can't be together in that way. We've done it. The library is paying for BrainFuse. And so what's next? So we'll continue our equity work. I mean, that is a commitment we'll continue during the pandemic and after the pandemic. So we are aligned. So on the city's website, there is a risk meter, and the city's EOC puts that out weekly. Every Friday, they put it out: low, moderate, high, severe. And so while we're in severe, We're only doing curbside and the call center. And once that goes to high, which I expect it to happen very shortly, we'll open back up for internet. So internet was something that internet in person is something that we had at the library until we went into severe, and then we shut it down. But we will be reopening that so people can come in for 45-minute appointments. They make appointments. We limit it. We have it very blocked off so people can maintain social distance. We provide services. We have some software to help us provide services from across the room, because you cannot be sitting next to somebody for 20 minutes helping them on the computer. And so that will be reopening. And then we will reopen for the public as soon as we go to moderate. So we're watching that weekly, and we'll open as soon as we can. We had a plan all in place, and we were actually very close to actually opening when we went into severe. So, so it will be express services. We will not allow people to come and stay all day. In COVID, it's all about proximity and duration. So you just can't have people come and stay all day. So we're going to have express services where people can come in, again, for 45 minutes, do what they need to do. We are going to take appointments so that we can limit capacity, because again, it's all about capacity. So, what the public hasn't gotten to see is how the library's been rearranged. And in this picture, you will see that the reference desk has actually moved. So when you used to come up the stairs, you had to walk all the way across the library to get to the reference desk. Now the desk is near the top of the stairs. So staff are much more prominent and more accessible. It's sometimes felt like you'd make eye contact with the librarian, and you had to keep your eye contact on them for seconds while you were walking across. But here you'll be able to they'll be right there and much more accessible. And so, so all the things that had been repaired, the flood damage is all repaired. And so we took advantage of some of those opportunities to make some changes to the library. So that's the big one, is moving the reference desk. And you'll also see improvements to the library's website. So there's going to be some big changes coming in March, and we're working on that. We also know that to be the library we have to get even better at community engagement. And that means building some skills that we just, in the past, when we were working on our strategic plan, we contracted with Wilder Research to help us with some of the community engagement work, because as we did that, and part of our strategic plan is making sure we hear from voices who aren't always at the table. So as part of our strategic plan, we had Wilder come in, and we worked with community partners to pull groups of people together for focus groups. So we said, we really want to make sure we're talking to low-income parents with preschool kids. We want to make sure we're talking to Spanish speakers. We want to make sure we're hitting different demographics within our community that don't often have time to come to public meetings. And so we paid people to come and talk to us and hear what they had to say, to make sure we were really listening to everybody. But that's a skill set we need to build internally, and that's something we're really committed to doing. And we're continuing to plan for collaborative services for people experiencing homelessness post-pandemic. I mean, we have seen what we can do working together, and we need to do better. We need to do better. There's just, we know we can, and we're working toward that. We need a place where people are respected no matter where they are in their life journey, and we can make it safer for everybody. And as part of that, one of our things that we actually got a grant for right before the pandemic was to put a social worker in the library, because we know that the library is that welcoming place, and that we have people experiencing homelessness in the library. We need to serve them even better. So that's another commitment of what's coming together. And I do want to give a shout out to to the whole library team. I mean, I can't tell you how amazing they have all been and how they've stepped up to do really different things, really hard things. And we all know how hard COVID is. You know, even if you've got a lot of supports around you, this COVID takes a lot. You know, the pandemic has taken a lot out of everyone. And I really want to give a shout out. The library team won both the City of Rochester Above and Beyond Award from the mayor and the from Zumbro Valley Medical Society, the Community Service Award from Zumbro Valley, and also our day center crew won the Minnesota Library Association Above and Beyond Award. So the team has really stepped up in ways that I'm just so grateful to them. They see what's happening, and they are so caring and compassionate. So with that, I will open it up and to answer questions.
That's fantastic. Let's give Audrey and the Rochester Public Library staff a round of applause. That's fantastic. Audrey, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to stop sharing your screen so we get you front and center with that. While you were talking, I have to tell you the comments were blowing up with things like, we're so grateful for the library, had no idea for the breadth of community involvement. Not all heroes wear capes. They might be library staffers. I always thought RPL was special. This is truly inspiring. And then Audrey's visionary leadership and integrated, fantastic team she has built makes so many things possible. You can tackle even the toughest issues with discipline, collaboration, and a lens of equity. So yeah, so many great comments.
Wow.
We did have some questions as well. We had a couple related to volunteering. What role is there currently for volunteers at the library?
It has been really limited. But here's what I will tell you. So an example of where we have been able to deploy volunteers has been with the seed library. So it's getting to be almost that time to start planting. And so what has been happening with the seed library is it's going to continue. But volunteers have been taking kits home to package seeds. So that's an example. The Friends of the Library have not begun taking donations yet. We don't really have anywhere to put them. It has been really the problem. You know, they continue to do some selling online, but you know, and generally speaking, our volunteers are in the higher risk age categories. So we've been really committed to keeping everybody safe. So as vaccine gets deployed, I think there will be additional conversation about how we can do that. You know, the other challenge that we have is every single service, because of social distancing, takes so much space. So for example, the internet, we take up the whole auditorium to do that, to have like 5 people in there, because to have the volume of air and to have people socially distant, it just takes so much space. So that has really been a challenge to get, even because, you know, the city is still really encouraging as many people to work from home as they can. So we're really trying to balance that and not trying to bring more people into the building. But where we can have volunteers work from home, we have been trying to do that.
That's great. Well, and that I think goes into my next question really well. Somebody wrote that they were really impressed with the calls and the postcards, how valuable that is, even without a pandemic, to call seniors and shut-ins. Do you need people to write or call?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. If somebody wants to reach out to me, we can make that happen.
All right. Brenda, could you put Audrey's contact information in the chat in case?
Absolutely. And I did write down the people that were interested in volunteering, and I have their email address, so I figured we would follow up.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, that is so true. You know, we've been really focused on the shut-ins and the seniors during the pandemic, but it's not just a pandemic.
Right.
not just
Right.
a pandemic. I hate to use the word issue, situation, concern. Yeah. So
Well, I think the pandemic has made us see what impact isolation has for everyone. And so I hope we learn from that and say, this is not just a pandemic problem.
yeah, good point. Really, really good point. Another question, where can regular patrons and what can regular patrons do to keep and fund the Fine Free initiative?
Oh, Brenda, you want to answer that one, right?
Well, we can always use donations that we can help put towards those Fine Free. Fine Free goes to so many things. It goes to materials. It can go for the social worker. You can donate as into unrestricted, or you can, there is a drop down feature where you can still donate to Fine Free if you would like.
We would love it. We would love it. We know fines are a barrier. We absolutely know they're a barrier. And so it's been really gratifying to remove that barrier at a time when people, right now, the main way to pay, if you do lose a book and need to pay for it, you have to do it online. There's really not a good way to pay for that in person, though we are working on that so that we can we'll soon be taking payments at the walk-up window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So another person wrote, they know that the pandemic has changed focus and priorities for the library. Are there any long-range plans for library branches outside of downtown?
So that's a great question. So here's, we know we have a space issue. Okay, we also have maintenance issues with this current building. The roof leaks badly. And we know that when the City Hall repaired their roof, it was over $1 million, and that was several years ago. So we have some major maintenance issues with this current building. The plan is to expand some way. There is no clear path forward yet on whether we expand in place, whether we become part of a mixed-use development, whether we build new on a different lot. I mean, all of those things are options. But the thing about branches, there's two things you have to know about branches. When you build them, you will never be able to close them. We saw that during the Great Recession, that there were branches that were not built in the best locations, and you still can't close them. People love their branch libraries, as they should. I mean, I totally understand that sentiment, but you have to be really intentional about where you build them so that they stand the test of time. Because if you build a branch in a neighborhood with lots of little kids, in 20 years, those kids won't be there. And so then that branch has to change. And that neighborhood may change. So, and because of equity, you really need to build where there's a good transportation infrastructure. And Rochester is still developing its transportation infrastructure. And so I want to make sure that wherever a branch gets built, it's built for the long term and built in a way that's sustainable for the community. Because the other thing you need to know about branches is it's one of the most expensive things you can do. I know it sounds like an expansion to the main library is a really expensive proposition, but it's nothing compared to the ongoing operating costs. Because when you expand a library, I don't have to go hire all new children's librarians. I move the children's staff up to to wherever that department is, but I don't have to restaff it. In a branch, it's all new staff. And at the point you start adding branches, you have to build additional infrastructure, because all of a sudden you have deliveries and we're a really flat organization, and that's not going to be able to be maintained. You're going to have a little bit more middle management to make that doable. So it ends up being pretty expensive. And in the past, and this is a whole new city council, the city council was not interested in increasing the library's operating budget. So you can't build a branch and not expand the operating budget. So those are the two things that I really, really believe that if we build, expand, build, whatever you want to say, solve the downtown library problem, its space issues. By the time we're ready to expand into branches, we'll be ready. We'll know what that transportation infrastructure is. The other thing you have in Rochester is we're a quadrant city. I don't know how you're going to build a branch northwest without all the other quadrants saying, what about me? So we're going to have to figure that part out too. And honestly, you know, because of that transportation infrastructure, if you have a car, you can still get downtown in 10 minutes. If you don't have a car, the only place you can really get with our transportation infrastructure is downtown. So we really have to make sure that everyone can use the library. So those are some of my comments about branches and library expansion. I do think it'll definitely be a conversation this year, and how do we grow? And I would hope that as we, branches are definitely in our future. Rochester is a growing community. They're definitely in our future. I don't have a guess on when they will be there, but it's important. And I totally understand why people love branch libraries. I do too. But I also say that it's really important that there's a place where people intersect in our community. And that's one thing that the one library building does really well, because we get people, you know, high income earners and people experiencing homelessness, all of them interacting productively, showing up to programs, using the space, using the internet. I mean, you know, we'll have visitors from the Mayo Clinic next to someone who's low income. And so that's really important for a community to have those places of intersection. And we need to be intentional about that, because we don't want our community to be even more segmented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. A couple of other questions that have come up. Where is the phone number for the COVID line? So
it is 507. It's on the city's COVID page. So if you go rochmn.gov/COVID, you know, of course my mind blanks right at the time.
Oh, that's no problem.
Yeah. It's 328-2. I think the mayor's on. Did I see the mayor jump on the call?
Yes, the mayor is on. Let me unmute her.
Oh, thank you, Kim.
Yep, I typed it in there, 328-2822. And as you said, it's well used, and I hope people continue to use it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. One last question. What's the future role of the library when the COVID is done? I know you spoke a little bit about that. When the COVID dial is low, but probably more important when the emergency funding is no longer available.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Look at the question in chat. Catherine, you have to ask.
Oh, yes. I will ask that as well.
So really we'll be back to doubling down on our strategic plan of equity and connection. And it's really being that place of learning for everyone, place of learning, place of connection. That's really what we will be working on. It'll be really critical for us as a community. I've been doing some really interesting reading about how communities do well, and there are different kinds of networks, and you really need both. You need those convening networks where people come together around shared passions, but you also need brokering networks that build that connection across the whole community. And I really believe that there's a place for the library in helping, especially with those brokering networks.
Yeah, for sure. Building that social capital and
Absolutely.
and like all of that. And I don't know if you heard, Audrey, and we had a wonderful wine tasting on Thursday evening with Val Raven. We're wondering if perhaps the bookmobile might be available for a road trip.
I'm sure
Sonoma.
the city's insurance would not cover that. But I love how you're thinking outside the box.
Well, you know, what better way to really spread the word about the amazing work that the Rochester Public Library does, and to be a beacon for other communities than a road trip, right?
I agree. I love it.
Well, boy, every time I hear you speak, Audrey has spoken to groups that I've been involved with, specifically around collaboration in our community, and continue to just be awed at the ways that our library truly is a partner in a gem and a real convener of things in our community. I think so many ideas start with the library and with you and your staff saying, what about, and bringing people together. And also your willingness to be at the table as well, to really say, oh my gosh, we can be of support and service. It is truly inspiring. And again, we are just so fortunate to have the library as a resource. So again, let's give Audrey and the library a round of applause. And again,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and again, I would just say to learn more about programs at the library, if you're inspired even more, I know I am, to donate, to help with some of these. Here's our website that you can go and learn more. And there is an auction going on right now as well. And again, all proceeds from the auction go to support library programming. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us for our session today. We will be back at 11:30 for those who have signed on for our next session. And again, we have things going on all day. So have a tremendous rest of the day, and we will see you soon.
I say now we're going to have to tell Audrey Hawk is also going to do some ghost hunting at the library. So,
Oh, okay. Cool.
we're just going to keep, volunteering the library space. That was awesome.